What's up everyone, welcome to my channel. My name is Allison and today I'm going to be going over how I moved across the country from San Francisco to New York City and everything that I think you should know if you also are going to be doing a long distance move. So let's just go ahead and get started. The first big decision that I think you need to make when you are starting this process of doing a long distance move is deciding whether or not you want to hire movers. If you have any amount of furniture that you want to move with you, then you're going to want to hire movers. But if not, and you don't have a lot of stuff, you can try to see if you can fit everything into luggage. Even if you just buy an extra suitcase or two and check them in on your flight, that'll still be way cheaper than hiring movers. If you're somewhere in between, you can also look into just like shipping a couple of boxes. I think the only thing there is figuring out what address you can ship them to where you can accept packages and pick them up from. But otherwise, if you do decide that you need to hire movers, I would say it's best to try to book them about a month in advance. So I would give yourself an extra week or two just to get multiple quotes from different companies to compare prices. And then once you've decided on which company to go with, then booking that moving day about a month in advance. I did decide to hire movers, so I can speak to my experience a little bit. But in general, I would say that a move can definitely vary pretty greatly. Like I would say the average long distance move will cost anywhere from like $1,000 to $4,000 depending on how much stuff you have. I think almost all moving companies, at least the ones that I looked into, charge by volumetric weight. So what that basically means is that if you have a lot of big furniture pieces that can't be disassembled easily, that is what's going to drive up your moving costs a lot. Depending on the value of the furniture you have, it can be more cost effective to just sell the furniture you have before you move and then just get new things once you're at your new place. When you're getting your moving estimates, I think a lot of the companies offer an in-person estimate. So someone will come over to your place, look at everything that you're considering moving, and then give you an estimate on how much it would cost to move all of it. For the most part, these quotes are very accurate, and as long as the items that you're moving doesn't change too much from that quote, the amount that you pay for the move is pretty much what they estimate. So I would highly recommend getting those in-person quotes whenever you're getting your moving estimates. And when you get that estimate, you can see a full breakdown of how they charge, and then you can use that to calculate the cost of how much it would be to move a particular item and see whether or not it's worth moving. Just to give you a reference of how much I paid for my move, we had 45 boxes and a couple of pieces of furniture. We had a desk, some dining chairs, a laundry hamper, and a big mirror, and the total for our move was about $1,800. So once you've made your decision about movers, maybe you've gotten a couple of quotes, hopefully booked your move date, the next big decision is deciding how and when you're going to apartment hunt. So the bottom line is basically deciding whether or not you want to have your apartment by the time you arrive and get to the new city, or if you're okay with getting some sort of short-term housing, maybe a sublet or an Airbnb or a hotel, and then just dedicating time to finding an apartment once you get to the city. So there are definitely pros and cons to both of these. I think if you're moving to any sort of big city like New York or LA or SF, it is actually pretty easy to find housing pretty immediately. A lot of units are put on the market as soon as they're available to move in. So of course it'll vary from person to person and what they're looking for, but I think it's completely reasonable to find some sort of housing in as little as a week or two. The benefit of going this route is of course that you get to pretty much see exactly where you're going to get. Being present in the city while you apartment hunt will help you get a better idea of what it's like to live in that area, walk around a bit, and just like take it all in. The downside is that you're simply just gonna have less options to choose from. You're gonna miss all of the units that were posted a week or two or even a month in advance of when you could actually move in. And it is a little stressful since you have to balance the amount that you're paying for your short-term housing and the time that it takes to actually find your apartment. If you decide that you'd rather not deal with that and just want to secure an apartment by the time you're ready to move in, then you are like me. And there are also a couple of things that you want to keep in mind with this option. So the only way you can secure an apartment, sign a lease, get everything ready in a city that's very far away from where you currently live, you're gonna either have to do everything remotely, or you can make a separate trip to that city before you move in order to do at least part of the apartment hunting process in person. So of course, taking a trip there has a lot of the same benefits as the previous option we talked about, where you're in person, you can get a feel for the neighborhood, see whether things are a scam or not. And while this trip will be the most useful the closer you take it to your actual move date, it doesn't actually have to be that close together. If there's a city that you know you would like to move to someday, then I would say definitely take a trip there if you can. go on vacation, take that opportunity to familiarize yourself with certain areas and neighborhoods that you may potentially want to live in. And you can even view some apartments just so you can see what is currently out there on the market. So flights are expensive, and flying during a pandemic does pose some additional risks. So I decided to go the fully remote route. Luckily, my boyfriend and I took a trip to New York just a little over a year prior, so I wasn't going in completely blind of moving to a new city. I also knew that I wanted to get a lease at a luxury building just because I really wanted an open layout and nice lighting in my apartment, and it's really hard to find that in a lot of the New York pre-war buildings. So because all the buildings I was looking at were all of these really big apartment buildings, it was actually super easy to apartment hunt remotely. They have all the floor plans, 3D tours, videos online, and they usually have multiple units available to choose from. And because these apartment buildings are so big and they rent out units remotely all the time, I personally felt fine with signing a lease without seeing the apartment in person. I definitely wouldn't say the same if I were looking at apartments that were being rented out by private owners. So if that makes up most of the apartments that you're looking into, then maybe going fully remote isn't the best option, unless you have a friend or family member who is in the city and is willing to like take a quick look at apartment just to make sure everything looks okay. So that was really long-winded, but once you figured out the how and when you're going to find your apartment, the next step is to find your housing for when you arrive to the new city. So whether it's your short-term rental or a place with the 1-year lease, you pretty much just need to narrow down the neighborhoods that you want to stay in as well as your budget. I feel like this step is like the most straightforward, but also the hardest to actually do. Like I touched on earlier, figuring out the neighborhood that you would like to live in is really important and really helps if you've been in the city before. If you haven't, just do your research. I feel like Reddit actually has some really good resources within each like city subreddit of what it's like to live there, what are the different neighborhoods like, but otherwise definitely ask around friends and family for anyone who has been there before and can share some information. In terms of where to find listings for apartments, for New York City, StreetEasy is definitely the place to go. In San Francisco and LA, there are a ton of different options, but I think for the most part, Zillow, Apartments.com, HotPads, those are all going to have like the same listings. And then Craigslist is also a pretty good resource for finding housing. For New York specifically, and to just kind of touch on my experience, if you're in a similar situation to what I was in and you're mostly looking remotely for apartments in large buildings, then I would recommend just like getting together all the buildings that you're interested in and just calling them as soon as they open and trying to get that appointment for a tour to talk to someone, because from my experience, people were pretty unresponsive, and because units can go really quickly, it's really important to get those tours scheduled so you can make your decision as quickly as possible. Once you've secured your housing, now you can book your flights. The only thing that you need to keep in mind here is the delivery estimate to get all of your stuff, whether you've hired movers or you're shipping a couple of boxes. From California to New York, it can take 1.5 to 3 weeks to get your stuff from the movers. So if you don't want to be without your stuff, then you're going to have to try to time your lease and your flight and all that with the delivery estimate. So that was already a lot of moving prep, and we haven't even gotten to the worst part, packing. The one general packing tip that I have is to number all of your boxes and then just keep like a document on your phone or your computer or something and just list as detailed as you can whatever is in that box. This will just make unpacking and finding things so much easier, especially if you're trying to be really smart and efficient about packing and then just kind of like mixing things wherever they fit, you know, because moving boxes across the country is not cheap. And also don't be like me where I numbered the boxes but didn't really write the contents in too much detail. The system is only as helpful as the things that you actually write down. And then besides that, I would just say to always err on the side of more caution when packing your things, especially things that are more fragile or valuable. Cross-country moves are no joke, and when I say that the condition of our boxes was not pretty when they arrived, some of them were honestly completely smushed, and that could just be the company that I went with, but I would say just don't expect them to be handling your stuff very delicately, and to just always add padding in your boxes and or using those heavy-duty boxes. And then once you're done packing, although these steps obviously don't need to happen like one after another, the last thing that you need to do to prep for your big move is to come up with a list of things that you're going to need on your first day/night in the new city. If you time your move so that you get to the city the same day that your stuff is scheduled to be delivered, then that actually works out really well and you probably don't need as much stuff. But I wouldn't necessarily recommend that because flights can always be delayed, moving companies can be delayed. I personally got the keys to my apartment 4 days before our stuff was actually delivered, so there was a lot of stuff that we needed to make sure we had with us those first 4 days in order to be comfortable, like an air mattress, sheets, pillows, blankets. So I just made a list of everything that we would need that I didn't want to repurchase when we got here, and then just packed as much of that as we could into our suitcase, including our bedding, some really basic cookware, and then we ordered an air mattress to be picked up once we got here. So that is all that I had to share about the moving process. I personally found the moving process really stressful, but it's totally doable, and I highly encourage and support and congratulate any of you who want to do a long distance move. I really hope my video laid things out in a way that made things more approachable and helpful. And if you have any questions about anything else, then feel free to leave it on a comment below. If you want to keep up with my life in New York and see more beauty, fashion, and lifestyle videos, then hit the subscribe button, come join the family, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!